Why am I making this review in 2019? Because it's fun, that's why. I remember a long time ago, when this movie first came out in 2010, and I first saw it with some friends in the theater, and I was kind of reluctant to go. I was just like, alright, I guess I'll go see this new Disney princess movie with some friends just to hang out with them, and, I didn't really expect anything out of the movie. But once it was over, I was like, okay, dang. Nice. So Tangled, what do I like about this movie? Well, shoot, where do I start? First of all, the humor in this movie, it is so intelligent, which is even more special because it's in a Disney film. It somehow blends meta self-awareness with this general aura of self-deprecation, almost as if the characters understand that they're in on some kind of inside joke about all of the cliches that the movie itself presents. If that makes any sense at all. I guess to use an example in the actual film is when Flynn is fighting with Maximus with the frying pan and the sword, and he's all like, "You should know that this is the strangest thing I've ever done." Yeah, it's kind of like that. I think the root of the humor in this movie lies in how the characters talk and in how they present themselves. They don't talk like characters. They don't talk or act as if they came out of the minds of artists. They really speak like witty, genuine people. Like how people actually act, which is amazing in a cartoon. I don't know how the animators managed to do this, but they made it seem as if you're just watching people being filmed. It doesn't feel like your typical run-of-the-mill cartoon character at all. It's pretty cool. The camera choices also play a really big role in how the jokes land. There's a lot of crash zooms, like when Maximus discovers that Flynn Rider is on the run. There are cameras that pan back and forth. There are a lot of sudden reveals, like a lot of sudden zoom outs, kind of like when Maximus hides behind a rock and he takes a bush and pulls it down to make this makeshift disguise. Yeah, the camera plays a much bigger part than you might realize upon a first viewing, but it's pretty awesome for having done so. The ensemble of characters, like so many movies, plays a huge part in how great of a film this is. This might sound like an interesting character to first start off with for an analyzation, but the mother. The mother is so annoying because she's so realistic. We as the audience are in on the secret of how evil she is, which makes it all the more worse when she's talking to Rapunzel and using this very restrained kind of... My lights just flickered. When she's talking to Rapunzel, she just has this kind of restrained sort of disdain for her, and it's so annoying as the audience. It's so grating on your nerves because you know that she doesn't really care at all for Rapunzel. She only cares about herself, but Rapunzel's too naive to know any better. Rapunzel herself isn't too bad of a character. She's not the most memorable, certainly out of the full cast. I think that she portrays a pretty good idea, pretty good presentation of what it's like to grow up and what it's like to discover the world outside of your immediate comfort zone. Actually, now that I think about it, in the history of Disney films, they don't really seem to be too good with lead characters. I mean, of course, there are some exceptions, but it seems like the side characters are really the ones that steal the show. And there are a few good reasons for that, of course. I mean, particularly with characters that can't talk. I think that really frees up the animators to put a lot more expression into them, and consequently, they're a lot more engaging. To quote the great Stravinsky, the more limitations you put on yourself, the more creative you have to be. I think another reason is that side characters don't have as much of an immediate impact on the main story, so they're freer to be themselves, so to speak. And Tangled has no exception of some really fun side characters who can't talk, like Pascal. I mean, I don't really have to say anything about Pascal. I mean, the guy is just a hilarious facial expression master frog, chameleon, nuance. And of course, good old Maximus, the horse/dog. I would say he's more dog. I mean, he's extremely loyal, his tail wags, and he clearly understands human speech. He's a dog. And of course, I've saved the best for last, my man Flynn Rider, or Eugene Fitzherbert. I mean, I guess I understand why they included that part. They wanted to humanize him. But I mean, come on, Flynn Rider. I mean, that's just one of the coolest names ever. Why did it have to be Eugene? I was on the IMDb trivia page of this film, and I heard that the animators and story people actually based Flynn Rider off of a combination of everything that women find attractive in a man. They actually went out and polled women about this, and based off of what they said, they kind of took all their opinions, mixed them all together, and out came Flynn Rider. So does that mean that women like the hair that's kind of long and split? They like a little bit of scruff? They like Han Solo-ish type clothes? I don't know, you tell me. And I think I actually just touched on a pretty important detail of the movie, is that Flynn Rider has a lot of similarities with Han Solo. He wears the vest, He's rogue, he has a devil-may-care attitude, he really cares about money. So it would seem like he's more based on Han Solo than what women say is most attractive in a man. Or maybe women find Han Solo to be the most attractive? Yeah, he's just one of the coolest characters, and he has some really great lines. You broke my smolder! The one and only Alan Menken wrote the songs for this movie, which I was not aware of upon my first viewing. In fact, on my first viewing, I don't even think I knew who Alan Menken was. But now that I understand how much of a creative genius he is, it explains why I love the song so much. Particularly, I Have a Dream. I Have a Dream is in tandem with the best scene in the movie, arguably, is when they go into that little pub and all the huge, massive Vikings are there, and then they break into a song and dance because, Disney film. But seriously, it's so great. Everything about it is great. Not only does this scene subvert expectations by taking these hulking, intimidating Vikings and associating them with these harmless passions that are typically tied with women, but it also gives us one of the funniest lines in the movie. Oh, sorry, boys, I don't sing. Whoosh! It's funny because the first time I saw that movie, I don't even remember how I reacted, but the second time I saw it, I could not stop laughing. Just the simple sound of all the swords coming in at one time, and the fact that it happened so quickly. I don't know. It's just my sense of humor. Now, the one that everyone talks about is At Last I See the Light. At Last I Saw the Light. I think it's At Last I See the Light. Yeah. I guess I have a bit of a minority opinion here in the sense that I think that it is just kind of your run-of-the-mill Disney love song. I mean, let's be honest. It's basically just a whole new world, but instead of on a magic carpet, they're on a boat. But what distinguishes this song from that, or any other love song that came before it, is just the sheer beauty of the animation. I mean, my goodness, just the lighting, the balance, and the fact that these lanterns are everywhere, and the fact that the lanterns somehow encase both Flynn and Rapunzel in this beautiful, glowing ember of love. Yes, I just came up with that. It's amazing. It's worth pointing out that particular environment makes it much better than most of the love songs that Disney has managed to churn out. I still think that the song itself is nothing to write home about, but if you see it within the context of the movie, it's pretty incredible. In general, I can excuse how ridiculous this movie is. I mean, you have, glowing hair, sentient animals, incredible feats of athleticism. But what I cannot excuse, under any circumstances, is the scene where Flynn is launched into the air about 80 feet, and he plops down in that way on Maximus, and he's totally fine. Totally fine. There is no way that he's having kids after that. No way. So this movie takes the charm and turns it up all the way to a 10. There's no doubt about that. One of the things that I'm not the biggest fan of is that the story's a bit predictable, which is kind of disappointing considering that this movie is such an original and fresh take on a familiar story, which is what Disney is best at. But honestly, as soon as Flynn comes into the discovery of the tower where Rapunzel is, you basically know how it's going to end. Although I will say that what was a bit unpredictable was when, spoiler alert, Flynn gets stabbed, and he also cuts Rapunzel's hair. You think that, wow, that's a pretty bold move right there. You weren't expecting that as an audience. But everything else, either before or after that, is pretty predictable. The ending in particular is kind of frustrating because it's so recycled. I mean, they literally say, we lived happily ever after. And again, for a movie to be so fresh and original on a familiar story, you'd think that it would end kind of in the same vein of the short film. I don't know how many of you guys have seen that, but it is awesome. It is hilarious. It's about the wedding, and if you haven't seen it, you should drop everything and go see it now. I honestly would have expected that kind of ending in the original film, based off of what we had seen so far. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the animators thought, you know what, that ending was a little too predictable. We're going to have to think of a new one. Also, the mother and the father don't really have a character, which is not always a bad thing. I think it definitely worked in this film up until they saw Rapunzel for the first time after 18 years. Because up until that point, they were just, symbols of sadness and really nothing more. They were kind of a goal for Rapunzel to reach. But when they saw her, suddenly it became very personal. But they had no real character to them, and you couldn't really relate to them as well about the sheer sadness and horror of thinking that their daughter is essentially dead. And also, I'm not a parent, but I would think that after seeing your child for the first time in 18 years, after believing that all hope was lost, you would do a number of things. Either faint, start weeping uncontrollably, or have a heart attack. But none of those things happen. They just kind of stand there in shock, and then they hug her, and the father just like breathes a little bit of sigh of relief, like when you get an A on your test after you thought that you would get an F. And that's it. And I know that it's the ending, and I know that it's, an animated movie, and it's Disney, and like the parents can't really, have a ultra realistic like weeping freak out session. But I guess I just would have preferred if they had maybe pushed it just a little bit more. I really don't see any way how you could dislike this movie. It's great for all ages. So if you haven't seen it, go do so. It's been 9 years. You don't have an excuse. And I'm going to give this one an 8.3 out of 10. So what's your favorite fairy tale that Disney has adopted and put into a feature film? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next cinematic adventure.